Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Kristen. I had a double lung transplant at the age of 24 and a kidney transplant at the age of 30. Today I'm going to be discussing my double lung transplant story, and that begins with me having cystic fibrosis. Now, cystic fibrosis is a disease that especially affects the lungs with constant infections and IV antibiotics, and over time the lungs get scarred and then you have trouble breathing and your lung capacity goes down until finally one day you need a transplant. One of the bugs that I caught when I was about 4 years old from soil was aspergillus. So I had allergic bronchopulmonary aspergillosis, and this caused me to cough up blood sometimes. So I had noticed around Easter of 2006 that something was wrong. I had never felt this out of breath, this winded, and I went to the hospital and I came home on oxygen. I probably should have been put on oxygen a bit before this, but I really needed it now. I couldn't even walk very far at all without oxygen. So I ended up in the hospital, and during the hospital stay, my mom had come to play Scrabble with me. It was nighttime. She left. I kissed her goodbye, brushed my teeth, and went to bed. And then all of a sudden, I felt this gurgling. And I had a very large lung bleed. It was very scary. And I did end up in the ICU. If you want to read more about that story, you can look at my blog. I'm not going to go into details, but it was very scary. I ended up in the hospital a few more times after that. And during one of my stays, my dad was a little frightened because it didn't seem like the doctors were doing anything to help me get better. And so he called up my CF doctor and he said, I don't think they're really trying to save her life here. And my doctor said, well, the last time that she had that big bleed in the hospital, she should have been unalive. And you have to learn to let go because she's not going to be alive much longer. So my dad said a few choice words and slammed the phone down. And then he called the transplant center himself and tried to get me an appointment. He got an appointment for 3 months from the time that he called. And I told my dad, I will not be here in 3 months. So he just kept calling and calling, and eventually there was a cancellation, and it wasn't too far away, like maybe a week or two. And I went to go see the doctor. I met a whole bunch of people, a whole team. It was a very long day, and it was very hard because I was in a wheelchair and I could barely sit up because I was so used to being in bed all day. I didn't have a lot of muscle. And he looked at me and he said, I don't know that you'll make it to the transplant list. And I just burst out crying because I thought, if I don't make it to the list, I'm not going to be alive much longer. And so then he asked me to go step on the scale, which was like 2 feet away from where I was sitting. And I got up and I went on the scale, and my oxygen was dropping dramatically. And he said, well, perhaps you will make it to the transplant list. We'll have to see what the tests say. And I was supposed to do 2 days of very intense testing, like test after test after test for 2 days. And I never made it to those tests because I ended up in the ICU locally, not at the transplant hospital. Before I ended up at the transplant hospital, I should mention, I had my mom sleeping in my bed with me at night because I was afraid that I might go into a crisis or maybe pass away in the night, and I didn't want to be alone. I had some monitors on me, like the pulse ox, and I thought, if something were to happen, I didn't want to be alone. And I also couldn't lay down to sleep because I couldn't breathe at all. Like the mucus was just suffocating me. So I had 2 pillows on my lap and I kind of just laid over them like that. And that's how I slept at night. I really had wanted to cry a lot of times. I was very scared. I had a lot of panic attacks, but I knew if I cried, I just didn't have the oxygen to do that. So I kept pushing those feelings down because I couldn't, thinking about maybe not being here anymore, I wouldn't let it cross my mind, because it happened once that I did, and I went into a complete panic attack. And not that I wasn't having panic attacks or complete anxiety every day, but I couldn't go down that rabbit hole. So while I was in the ICU, one of my therapists came down to see me from one of my previous hospital stays. He had heard that I was in the ICU, and I was in really bad shape. Like, I was coughing a lot, but I couldn't really get the mucus up because it was so thick. So he took a tongue depressor and a small anesthesia mask, and he started hitting me with it, kind of like CPT, where you cup your hands, and that helps loosen the mucus. So he was hitting me with that, and I was able to cough up some mucus, and someone had to wipe it off my tongue because I couldn't even spit it out. Like, I had no energy at all. And that did help me breathe a little easier at that point. So I was really grateful to him. And I had heard that, he was risking his job coming down there and doing that, because, he wasn't supposed to be doing that. While in the ICU, I was placed on the BiPAP because I was really struggling to breathe. And the BiPAP forces air into your lungs and helps you breathe more, rhythmically, and helps you get the oxygen you need. The problem is the BiPAP had been set on hot air. So it was really a struggle to breathe until finally someone realized, hey, this is supposed to be on cool air, because I was just burning up with fever and infection, and I was just so sick. Now, I can't remember if it was at the transplant hospital or the local hospital, but my family was called in to say their goodbyes to me. And I don't remember this at all. And I've asked family members, and somehow they can't remember if it was at the transplant hospital or if it was at the local hospital. Eventually, I was transferred to the transplant hospital. While I was there, I remember asking my parents 3 times if I could let go, and they told me no. And that's really what I wanted to hear. I mean, if they said I could, I don't know if I'd still be here today, but I needed to know that they still believed there was a chance for me to survive. Again, I wasn't really on the list. I hadn't done my tests. I was extremely sick with fever, and usually they don't transplant you if you're very sick and having a fever and active infections that, not at the point that I was. I'm not even sure how I asked, because I hadn't really been talking, because talking took way too much effort and energy. So I had also asked twice if I could be put on a ventilator. Maybe it was more than that, I'm not sure. But, they said no, and then eventually they said yes. And it turned out that they had found lungs for me, and they wanted to give me a little break from the strenuous breathing that I was doing. They put me on the ventilator, and I really don't remember that at all. I have no memory of it. Within 20 hours of being in the transplant hospital, I received lungs. Again, it was really a miracle, because I hadn't been on the list, hadn't done the tests. I mean, maybe they put me on the list without doing the tests when I got to the hospital. But again, I had no reason to even hope, but I kept hope alive. I couldn't even imagine any other way than being alive and living and getting lungs. My surgeon told us after I had been in recovery for a while that it's a good thing I got my transplant when I did, because I only had about 2 hours of life left in me. When I woke up, I had a breathing tube down my throat, and I kept trying to adjust it, and because it was so uncomfortable being awake with a breathing tube. And the nurses would be like, you can't touch that, or else we're going to tie your hands down. So I was like, fine, I guess I have to stop. But it was so hot and dry in my throat. I wanted it out so badly. And one of the things that happened when I woke up is that I was hallucinating. I hallucinated that I was naked on a plate, which was on my bed, a big plate, and I was laying on it. And then there was this huge wedding cake, a tiered wedding cake on top of me, and that my leg was chained to the bed, both of my legs. And And it was extremely frightening because I hadn't gone to any of the lung transplant like seminars or courses, or they have like little group meetings and stuff that you're supposed to do at least like a year before you get your transplant, so you're prepared for everything that's to come. And I didn't know that hallucinating was part of it, so I just thought I thought it was real, and it was extremely terrifying. I also had a tube down my throat, so I could not speak. I could not say, hey, this is happening and I'm scared. So also when I woke up, and after the hallucinations and everything and the breathing tube was taken out, I realized I couldn't really move my legs much, and I could move my arms like just a little bit, and that I had lost a lot of muscle just breathing. So it was really, that recovery was really hard. I had to sit up in chairs and stuff, and it was like complete agony to be sitting because I had no core muscle. So it was really hard for me, and I couldn't walk for a long time. And when I had woken up, I had also wanted to tell the nurses, like, again, I was intubated, and I wanted to say that I want to be unalive because the pain was so intense. And with the breathing tube, I just felt so miserable, and it felt like there was a tight belt wrapped around my lungs, but it was really the incision. They gave me a board to write because they realized I wanted to say something, but I couldn't write because I didn't have the muscle in my hands to even write. So, the recovery process took a while. I was in the hospital for a month and a half. And after the month, I was starting to do a bit better. My infections were under control. I was getting IVs and starting to do a bit better. Sitting up, taking a small walk, down the hallway with a walker. And then they decided to move me to the rehab floor for 2 weeks. So up there I did occupational therapy, physical therapy, and group therapy. And it was really hard because, again, I didn't have the muscle to really do it, which is why I was there in the first place. But it was really hard, the recovery. But my family was always around me. They visited me like every day. Like someone was always with me, which I'm so grateful for. I'm so grateful that I have a large family. I come from a family of 7, 2 parents, 5 kids. I'm the middle. And I'm really close with my family. So it was, I wouldn't be here without them. I also wouldn't be here without the doctors, the nurses, the therapists, my coordinators, and most of all, my donor, Wilson. I'm eternally grateful. I've been out of transplant now 19 years for the lungs and 13 years for my kidney. And given all this time, I have grown a lot. I've learned so much, and I'm just so grateful, and I've enjoyed so many things, and I got to spend so much time with my nieces and nephews who I wouldn't have even known if I didn't get the transplant. I had one niece and one nephew at the time who were really little, and that was part of the reason that got me through all this, is thinking about my unborn nephew. I wanted so badly to meet him, and for my niece and nephew who were already born, I wanted them to remember me and know me, and I wanted so badly to be with them because I love children so much, and I'm just so grateful. So that's my story. I did have a lot of bumps the first 6 years out of transplant, but I guess that's, everyone has their own unique journey with transplant, and it's not uncommon to have a lot of bumps. I've had a few close calls even, but after the 6th year, everything kind of got better. I still have bumps, I still, have scares, but it's all worth it to me. Everything has been worth it to be alive. So thank you for joining me and listening to my story. I hope that you will tune in for some more videos, and thank you.